Welcome to Wealth and Compliance Academy. Today, we're diving into a process that every single compliance pro has to master, KYC onboarding. Look, whether you're trying to land your first job or gunning for that next promotion, knowing this workflow inside and out is absolutely critical. So, let's jump right in.
And listen, that is not an exaggeration. It's the truth. If you can confidently walk someone through these core steps, you're already way ahead of the game. Seriously, think of this explainer as your secret weapon for that next interview or your next big project.
All right, first things first. Before we get into the how, we've got to talk about the why. You see, onboarding is way more than just filling out forms. It's the moment a financial institution acts as a gatekeeper for the entire global financial system. This is, well, it's the very first test any potential client has to pass.
And these 4 points, they're all connected, kind of like pillars holding up a roof. A solid onboarding process is your #1 line of defense against financial crime. Get that right, and you're ensuring regulatory compliance, which, helps you dodge those massive fines. Plus, it builds real trust with your legitimate clients and guarantees transparency by showing you exactly who's behind every single transaction.
Okay, so here it is, the core 5-step workflow. This is our roadmap for the rest of this explainer. We're going to really zero in on these first few crucial stages: identification, verification, and risk assessment, which, by the way, also includes figuring out who the beneficial owners are. Let's start with that first piece of the puzzle.
All right, step 1. This phase actually combines 2 super important actions, identification and verification. This is where we answer the biggest question in all of KYC. Who exactly are we dealing with here?
So identification is all about collection. It's the info gathering stage. For a person, you're grabbing their name, address, date of birth, the basics. For a business, you're looking for its legal name, registration number, and what it actually does. You're basically building the foundational file on your potential customer.
But, just collecting a bunch of information isn't enough, right? That's where verification comes in. This is the prove it step. It's where you confirm that the person or business is actually who they say they are. And you can't just take their word for it. Nope. You have to use independent, reliable sources. So, what do these independent sources look like in the real world? Well, we're talking about checking things against official government databases, pulling credit reports, and using these awesome third-party verification services. For businesses, it means you're really digging into official company registration docs to make sure they're legit and still active.
Okay, so once you know who the customer is, the very next question is, how much of a risk do they pose? And that brings us to the real analytical heart of onboarding: risk profiling and assessment.
Risk profiling isn't just a hunch or a gut feeling. It's a structured, methodical assessment. You're literally creating a risk profile for the customer that's going to guide every single interaction you have with them from here on out. This profile tells you exactly how much scrutiny they need, from simple checks for the low-risk folks to really intense, enhanced due diligence for the high-risk ones.
So what goes into this profile? Well, there are 4 big ones to think about. First up, geography. Is the customer from or doing business in a country known for corruption or weak anti-money laundering controls? That's a flag. Second, business type. Some industries, like casinos or certain types of real estate, are just naturally higher risk. Third, their transaction activity. Are we expecting them to move huge amounts of money, especially across borders? And finally, their PEP status. Is this customer a politically exposed person? Do they have influence over public money? You gotta know.
And based on all those factors, we can usually sort customers into 3 main buckets. You've got your low-risk customers. Think of a big, publicly listed company in a stable country. Pretty straightforward. Then you have medium risk, which might be something like a private company doing business all over the world. And high risk? That's your PEPs. Businesses in those tricky sectors like gambling, or really any company operating out of a sanctioned country. Getting this right is absolutely crucial.
Okay, now we get to what is honestly one of the trickiest but most important parts of this whole thing, especially when you're dealing with companies. It's not enough to know the company's name on the building. You have to figure out who is really pulling the strings behind the scenes.
And that brings us to this key term, the ultimate beneficial owner, or UBO. This is the actual person, a real live human being who ultimately owns or controls the company. Their name might not be anywhere on the official paperwork, but believe me, they are the one calling the shots.
And why do we care so much about this? It's simple. Criminals love to hide behind complex company structures. Think of shell companies or trusts stacked on top of each other across different countries. It's how they launder money.
Identifying the UBO is like piercing through that corporate veil. It shines a light on who you're really doing business with.
All right, we've covered the theory. Now let's get practical. Let's make this real. In this next section, we're going to look at a kind of field guide, some tools you can use right away to make sure your onboarding is locked down and effective.
Think of this slide as your pre-flight checklist for every single corporate client you onboard. Did you verify the legal name and registration number? Did you confirm the company is actually active? Do you know all the directors? And here's the big one, all the UBOs? Have you figured out their source of wealth and screened everyone against sanctions lists? Following a checklist like this just ensures you don't miss a thing.
Now, knowing what to do is half the battle, but knowing what not to do, that can save you from some major compliance nightmares. So let's quickly go over the 3 most common mistakes people make during onboarding.
Okay, mistake number 1, an incomplete risk assessment. If you just gloss over a customer's connection to a high-risk country, you've missed a giant waving red flag. Second, superficial verification. Just taking the documents they give you at face value without checking them against independent sources. That is a recipe for disaster. And finally, the cardinal sin, ignoring the UBO. If you stop at the company name and don't dig deeper to find the real person in control, you haven't really done your job.
So let's wrap this all up. What's the takeaway? Effective onboarding really boils down to these 4 things. Identify who your customer is, verify that they're telling the truth, assess the level of risk they bring, and find the true owner. If you can nail these 4 actions, you are well on your way to being a top-tier compliance pro.
But of course, onboarding is just the first step, isn't it? It's the beginning of the relationship. And as we all know, things change. Customers change, risks evolve. So the natural question is, what's next? And in our next explainer, that's exactly what we're going to cover. We're going to dive into the rest of the KYC lifecycle. We'll explore periodic reviews, what triggers an event-driven review, and even the right way to offboard a customer when it's time to part ways. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it.